So noble Odysseus was left behind there in the hall, with Athene's aid contriving a plan to kill the suitors, and now he addressed Telemachus with winged words, saying, Telemachus, we must lay up all our weapons of war inside and disarm the suitors with soothing words when they note their absence and ask you questions about them. Say, I stored them away from the smoke, since they no longer look as they did when Odysseus left them on going off to Troy, but are blackened with all the fire's breath that's got to them. And there's a greater concern some god has put in my mind, that when you're flushed with wine you may pick a quarrel among you, and wound one another, and so disgrace your feast and your wooing, for iron of itself attracts a man. So he spoke. Telemachus obeyed his own dear father, and summoned his nurse Euryclea, and addressed her, saying, Good mother, please keep the women confined to their quarters, while I put away in the storeroom the weapons of my father, fine gear, left in the house uncared for, blackened with smoke ever since my father's departure, when I was still a child. But now I want to store them out of reach of the fire's breath. His dear nurse Euryclea responded to him, saying, Indeed, child, I could wish you were always so concerned to take care of the house and to guard the possessions in it. But who, pray, will go get a light and carry it for you? The maid servants would have done it, but you won't let them. Sagacious Telemachus responded to her, saying, This stranger here, for I'll permit no man to be idle who gets my rations, however remote the place he's from. So he spoke, but her answer remained unwinged, and she barred the doors of the pleasantly sited halls. Odysseus and his illustrious son now both set to work carrying in the helmets and the embossed shields, the sharp-pointed spears, and before them Pallas Athene went holding a golden lamp that made resplendent light. At once Telemachus spoke and addressed his father, saying, Father, here's a great wonder that my eyes behold. Really, the walls of the hall and its elegant panels, the roof beams of fir, and the tall posts holding them up are glowing bright to my eyes, like a blazing fire. Surely some god's in here, one of those who hold wide heaven. Resourceful Odysseus responded to him, saying, Hush! Keep this to yourself and ask no questions. This is indeed the way of the gods who hold Olympus. You go get your rest now. I shall stay here and provoke more interest yet in the handmaids and your mother. She'll weep and question me about every detail. So he spoke, and Telemachus now went out through the hall, lit by the flaring torches, to bed down in his room, where he always retired when sweet sleep came upon him. Now once more he lay down there to await the bright dawn, while noble Odysseus was left behind there in the hall, with Athena's aid, contriving a plan to kill the suitors. Now prudent Penelope came down from her chamber in appearance like Artemis or golden Aphrodite, and for her they set a chair by the fire, where she always sat, inlaid with spirals of silver and ivory. This was the work of the craftsman Icmalios, who'd fashioned a stool for the feet that was part of the chair itself. A great fleece was spread on it. On this, then, prudent Penelope sat, while her white-armed handmaids came in from the women's hall and began to remove all the leftover food, as well as the tables and the cups from which these haughty men had been drinking. They threw out the ash from the braziers, heaped them up with fresh firewood to provide both light and warmth. And now Melantho began once again to scold Odysseus, saying, Stranger, are you still here? Are you going to annoy us all night, prowling round the house, spying on the women? Get out of here, you wretch! Be content with your supper, or you'll soon be thrown out and beaten with firebrands, too. With an angry glance, resourceful Odysseus responded, Woman, why reprimand me in so resentful a spirit? Is it because I'm dirty and wear mean clothes and go begging my way through the neighborhood? It's need compels me. That's the way it is with beggars and vagabonds. Yet I, too, once dwelt in my own rich house among other prosperous men, and I often would give to a vagrant, no matter what sort he was, or what he arrived in need of. Countless servants I had, and much else in abundance, owning which men live well, and are known as wealthy. But Cronos' son Zeus wrecked it all on some whim, I guess. So take care, good woman, lest one day you lose all that beauty for which you stand out among the handmaids, lest your mistress may come to dislike you and treat you harshly, or Odysseus may return. There's still hope. But even if he's actually dead and will never more come back home, yet already, thanks to Apollo, his son's such a man as himself, Telemachus, he doesn't miss it if one of the serving women in the hall misbehaves. He's no longer the child he was. So he spoke, and prudent Penelope heard what he said, and rebuked the maidservant, addressed her directly, saying, Bold woman, impudent bitch, none of your gross misconduct has escaped me. On your own head you'll wipe it off. Well did you know, since it was from me you heard it, that I wanted to question the stranger here in my halls about my husband, for whom my grief is great and ceaseless. With that she also addressed the housekeeper Eurynome, saying, Eurynome, bring a chair here, and spread a fleece upon it, so the stranger may sit down now and tell me his story, and also listen to me. I'm eager to question him. So he spoke, and Eurynome at once went off and fetched a polished chair, and threw a fleece over it. Then much enduring noble Odysseus seated himself, and prudent Penelope was the first to start their discussion, saying, Stranger, I shall begin by asking you this question. Who are you? From where? What city? Who are your parents? To her then resourceful Odysseus responded, saying, Lady, no mortal on this boundless earth could ever find fault with you. Your fame goes up to the wide heaven like that of some king, a blameless, God-fearing person who reigns over many valiant men and upholds justice. One for whom the black soil bears in abundance both wheat and barley. The trees are heavy with fruit. The flocks bring forth young in season. The sea yields fish, all from his good leadership, and his people thrive under him. So question me in your house about anything else, but don't ask me about my background or my native country, lest you fill my heart with yet more suffering as I recall them, for I'm a man of deep grief. What's more, it's not right that I should sit in someone else's house weeping and wailing. Such uncurbed sorrow's a bad thing. I don't want one of your handmaids, much less you yourself, saying I swim in tears, since my mind's deep sodden with wine. Then prudent Penelope responded to him, saying, Stranger, any excellence of beauty and figure I had the immortals destroyed at the time the Argives embarked for Ilion, and among them went my husband Odysseus. Were he only to come back now and give comfort to my life, greater would be my renown and finer too. But now I grieve. So many sorrows has some god laid upon me. All the high-born leaders who lorded over the islands, Dulichion and Same and forest Zakynthos, besides those who rule as princes in rugged Ithacae, all court me against my will and squander my property, and so I pay no attention to strangers and suppliants or to heralds at all, who indeed are public officials, but waste my own heart away in yearning for Odysseus. So these men urge my remarriage while I spin my deceits. First, some god put in my mind the idea of a great web in my halls, so I set up a big loom and started weaving. Broad was the web, fine of thread, then addressed them, saying, You young men, my suitor's now noble Odysseus is dead. Be patient, though eager to wed me, until I finish this web. I should not want my woven work to be wasted, a shroud for the hero Laertes, against that day when the grim fate of pitiless death shall overtake him. Then the local Achaean women won't be able to blame me for a man who'd won so much being left with no winding sheet. So I spoke, and the manly spirit was persuaded within them. From then on, day after day, I'd weave at the great loom, but at night I'd have torches set up and undo my work. Thus for 3 years I convinced and deceived the Achaeans, but when the 4th year arrived, and the seasons came round, and the months wore away, and day after day passed by, then it was that, told by my handmaids, the uncaring bitches, they stole up on me and caught me, reproached me loudly. So against my will I was made to finish the job perforce. And now I can neither avoid this marriage nor find any other way of escape. My parents keep urging me to get wed. My son frets as these men consume our estate, something he understands, for now he's a man, well able to look after a household to which Zeus still grants honor. Yet even so, tell me your family, where you come from. You're not sprung from the oak of legend, nor from a rock. Then resourceful Odysseus responded to her, saying, "Respected wife of Odysseus, son of Laertes, will you never quit questioning me about my background? I'll tell you then, though you'll give me over to yet more griefs than I have already, but that's the way of it. When a man's been absent from home as long as I have, a vagrant who suffered much on the road from city to city, nevertheless I'll answer your questions and inquiries. There's a country called Crete out in the wine-dark deep, fine, rich-soiled, and sea-girt. It has in it many people, so many they're countless. They have 90 cities and various tongues, one mixed with another. Achaeans, proud native Cretans, Kidonians, all are established there, with Dorians in 3 settlements, and noble Pelasgians too. Among their townships is Knossos, a great city, in which Minos ruled from the age of 9, held converse with great Zeus, and was father to my father, great-hearted Deucalion. Deucalion sired both me and the lordly Idomeneus, who'd set out for Ilion in his curved ships, along with the sons of Atreus. My own famous name is Aiton. I was the younger by birth, he my elder and better. It was there I met Odysseus. Gave him a guest friend's gifts, for a gale-force wind had brought him too to Crete, as he made for Troy, driving him off course past Malia. So he put into Amnisnos, site of the cave of Eiletia, in a difficult harbour, having barely escaped the storm. He went up to the city at once, and asked for Idomeneus, claiming to be his dear and respected guest friend. But it was 10 or 11 days since Idomeneus had gone, sailing away with his curved ships to Ilion. So I escorted him to our house and welcomed him properly, with full entertainment from our rich household store. And for the rest of the comrades who were with him, I obtained from public reserves both barley and bright red wine and sacrificial cattle to keep them well satisfied. There for 12 days the noble Achaeans were delayed by a north wind so powerful it wouldn't even let them stand upright. I suppose some maleficent deity roused it. But on the 13th day the wind dropped, and they put to sea. Thus he told many lies, but made them seem like the truth. And her tears flowed as she listened, her stubborn heart melted, as snow will melt on a high mountain's ramparts, where the east wind thaws the snow that a west wind has sent down, and melting it brims the fast-flowing rivers. Just so her fine cheeks streamed with the tears she shed, as she wept for the husband sitting beside her. But though Odysseus pitied his sobbing wife in his heart, yet nevertheless his eyes, as though made of horn or iron, remained unwavering under their lids. Deceptively he concealed his own tears. When she'd had her fill of tearful lamentation, once more she responded to him, saying, "Now I think I need to make trial of you, stranger, and discover whether you and your godlike comrades did in fact entertain my husband at home the way you claim. Tell me, what clothes was he wearing? What kind of person was he himself? Which companions did he have with him?" Resourceful Odysseus then responded to her, saying, "Lady, it's hard for one who's been so long abroad to say for sure. It's now the 20th year since he departed thence, leaving my native country. However, I'll tell you how my memory pictures him today. Noble Odysseus had on a woolen cloak, purple in color, and double-folded, its fibula fashioned of gold with twin pin sheaths. On its front was delicately incised a hound with a dappled fawn gripped in its forepaws, watching it writhe, and everyone thought it marvelous how the dog, though of gold, eyed the fawn it was throttling, while the fawn's feet were struggling in its efforts to escape. I noted the tunic he wore, too. It shone all over, like the sheen you see on the skin of a dried onion. So soft and sheer it was, and as bright as sunlight, and many indeed were the women who marveled at it. And another thing I will tell you, and you take it to heart. I don't know whether Odysseus wore such clothes at home, or if some comrade gave him them on boarding that swift ship, or a stranger perhaps, since to many Odysseus was a good friend, and few Achaeans could be called his equal. I gave him a bronze sword myself, and a double-folded cloak, a fine purple one, and a tunic with a fringe, and saw him off properly in his well-benched vessel. And there was a herald with him, a slightly older man. Let me describe him to you as I recall he looked. Round-shouldered, dark of complexion, with curly hair, and his name was Eurybates. Odysseus respected him more than his other companions. They were a like-minded pair. So he spoke, and stirred in her heart yet more the urge to weep, since she recognized the sure signs that Odysseus had told her. But when she had had her fill of tearful lamentation, she then responded to him, saying, "Hitherto, stranger, you've earned our pity, but from this time on in my halls you'll receive the treatment that's kept for an honored friend. I myself gave him those clothes, just as you described them, from the storeroom, folded them, attached that bright brooch as an ornament for him. But himself I'll never welcome, returning back home to his own beloved country. An ill-fated day it was then, when Odysseus set out in his hollow ship to Ilion, that unspeakable name." To her then resourceful Odysseus responded, saying, "Respected wife of Odysseus, son of Laertes, no longer mar your fair flesh, nor waste away your heart in mourning your husband, though I cannot blame you, for any woman will weep when she's lost her wedded husband, to whom she's borne children conceived in love, though he'll not be an Odysseus, who they say was like the gods. Now stop your crying, and attend to my words, for I'm going to tell you the truth, and hold back nothing. I recently heard news concerning Odysseus' return, that he's near, in the rich country of the Thesprotians, still alive, and bringing with him much splendid treasure, collecting it through the region. But his trusty companions he lost, with his hollow ship, on the wine-dark deep on his way from the isle of Thrinaciae, for Zeus and Helios made him suffer because his comrades had slaughtered Helios' cattle. So they all perished in the surging deep, but him, astride his ship's keel, the wave is then cast ashore in the country of the Phaeacians, who are kin to the gods. These treated him like a god, paid him heartfelt honors, gave him many gifts, and were themselves quite willing to escort him home unscathed. Odysseus would have been back here long since, had he not thought it more gainful to amass a great deal of wealth by wide world travel, for Odysseus excels all mortals in his knowledge of ways to profit, a field in which no other man could match him. King Phaedon of the Thesprotians told me as much. Moreover, he told me on oath, while pouring libations at home, that the ship had been launched, and the crew were in readiness to convey him to his own country. But me he sent off first, since there chanced to be a Thesprotian vessel ready to sail for Dulichion, that country rich in wheat. And he showed me all the possessions Odysseus had amassed, enough to support his descendants to the 10th generation, were the treasures stored for him there in the king's domain. But Odysseus, he said, had gone to Dodone to discover from the deep-leaved sacred oak what Zeus was planning, and how he should make his way back to Ithaca's rich land after so long an absence, whether openly or in secret. Thus, as I say, he is safe. He'll be here at any moment. He's very near now. Not much longer will he be absent from his friends and his country. I'll give you my sworn word. Zeus first, highest and best of gods, be my witness, and the hearth of peerless Odysseus, to which I have come, that all these things indeed will come to pass, as I tell you. Within the current moon's sequence, Odysseus will arrive here, between this month's waning and the rise of the next. Prudent Penelope then responded to him, saying, "Would that these words of yours, stranger, might be fulfilled. Then you'd soon know both friendship and gifts in plenty from me. Any man who met you would call you blessed. But this is how, in my heart, I think it will be. Odysseus will never more come home. Nor will you obtain conveyance. There are no longer such masters in this house as Odysseus was among men, if he ever existed, to welcome respected strangers or escort them on their way. Nevertheless, my handmaids, bathe him, make his bed with bedding and coverlets and bright-colored blankets, so he's warm until he comes through to don the golden throne. Then early tomorrow bathe him and rub him with oil, so that in here beside Telemachus he may sharpen his appetite as he sits in the hall. It will be the worse for any of these men who rudely annoys him. Such a man will have no future here from now on, no matter how angrily he reacts. For how will you learn about me, stranger, whether I really excel other women in mind and prudent counsel, if you sit down to a meal in my hall unwashed and in threadbare clothes? Men's span of life is brief. Whoever is harsh himself, whose mind knows harshness, on him all mortals invoke disaster for the future while he lives, and the whole world mocks him once he's dead. But whoever is blameless himself, and has blameless thoughts, strangers will spread his renown both far and wide among all mankind, and many will praise his nobility. Resourceful Odysseus then responded to her, saying, Respected wife of Odysseus, son of Laertes, coverlets and bright-colored blankets have been hateful to me ever since I left Crete's snow-clad mountains behind me and sailed away in my long-oared ship. I shall bed down as I've done on other sleepless nights, many the nights I've spent on some wretched resting place, lying there waiting for the brightly enthroned dawn. Nor does the washing of feet bring solace of any kind to my heart. There isn't a woman that shall touch my feet of all the servants you have here in this house, unless there's maybe some aged woman with a devoted heart, who suffered as much in her spirit as I have myself. I wouldn't have any objection to her handling my feet. Once more prudent Penelope responded to him, saying, Dear guest, never yet of the strangers from distant places has a man so sagacious been more welcome in my home. So well phrased and responsible is everything you say. I do have one such old woman, very sensible-minded, who nursed and cared for that unfortunate man, cradled him in her arms the day his mother bore him. It's she who shall wash your feet, enfeebled though she is. Come on, up with you now, my prudent Eurycleia, and wash one of an age with your master. Odysseus, I'm sure, must by now have just such feet and just such hands, for too soon does the stress of ill fortune age us mortals. So she spoke. The old woman hid her face in her hands, shed hot tears, then uttered words of lamentation, saying, Alas, child, for you I am helpless. Zeus must have hated you, devout heart though you had, beyond all other men. Never yet to Zeus, hurler of thunderbolts, did a mortal burn so many fat thighs, such splendid arrays of oxen as you offered up, with prayers that you might achieve a sleek old age and rear your illustrious son. But now, you alone, he's wholly deprived of a day of homecoming. He too, I imagine, was jeered at by the women of far distant strangers when he came to some house of renown, just as these bitches here are all together making fun of you. And it's to avoid their mistreatment and endless insults that you won't let them wash you. So it's me, nothing loath, to whom Icarios' prudent daughter Penelope's given the job. So I'll wash your feet, both for Penelope's sake and yours, since the heart in my breast is stirred by sorrow. But now take good note of what I'm about to say to you. Many a travel-worn stranger's made his way here, but none, I tell you, have I yet seen who bore so close a resemblance as you do, voice, build, and gait, to Odysseus himself. To her resourceful Odysseus then responded, saying, Old dame, that's what everyone says who's seen us both, that we resemble each other closely, a likeness that you too have now noticed and remarked on. So he spoke. The old woman took the bright cauldron and prepared to wash him. She first poured out a lot of cold water, then added some hot. But Odysseus sat down by the hearth, and at once turned away toward the darker side, because he'd suddenly realized that when she was handling him, she would notice the scar, and the truth would be revealed. And indeed, as she settled in close to wash her lord, she did at once know the scar of a wound that a boar's white tusk had made when he went to Parnassus, to Autolycus and his sons, his mother's noble father, who outstripped all mankind in thieving and artful oaths, a talent bestowed by a god. Hermes, to whom he burned acceptable thigh pieces of lambs and kids, and so was quite ready to protect him. Now Autolycus paid a visit to the rich land of Ithaca, where he found the son of his daughter recently born, and Eurycleia placed the baby on his knees at the moment he was finishing supper, then spoke and addressed him, saying, Autolycus, up to you now to find a name to bestow on your own child's dear child. He has been much prayed for. To her, Autolycus then responded, saying, My daughter's husband, and you, my daughter, give him the name I shall tell you. Since I come here as one who's dealt pain and grief to many, men and women alike, over the fruitful earth, let his name be Odysseus. And I, for my part, when he comes as a grown man to the great house on Parnassus of his mother's family, where I keep my possessions, will give him his share and send him back rejoicing. This was what Odysseus had come for, to get his splendid gifts. Autolycus greeted him, and the sons of Autolycus too, with handshakes and expressions of cordial welcome, and his mother's mother, Amphithea, embraced Odysseus and kissed his head and both of his beautiful eyes, and Autolycus gave the word to his illustrious sons to get dinner ready, and they responded to his call. At once they brought in a male ox 5 years old, flayed it, dressed it, butchered the whole carcass, expertly cut up the pieces, and threaded them on spits, roasted these carefully, and then shared out the portions. So all day long, until the hour when the sun went down, they feasted, and no one lacked his fair share of the meal. But after the hour of sunset, when darkness came on, then they retired to rest and embraced the gift of sleep. When dawn appeared, early risen and rosy-fingered, they sallied forth on the hunt, both the dogs and the sons of Autolycus, and along with them noble Odysseus went too. Up the steep slopes of the forest-clad mountain Parnassus they climbed, and soon reached its windy ravines. The sun was just striking the fields below, on its way up from the peaceful and deep-flowing stream of ocean, when the hunters came to a forest glen. Ahead of them went the dogs, pursuing a scent, and close behind them Autolycus' sons, among them noble Odysseus, hard on the heels of the dogs, and brandishing his far-shadowing spear. There, in a dense thicket, was crouched a huge wild boar. The damp force of driving winds could not penetrate its lair, nor the sun with its gleaming rays shine into it, nor the rain pierce right through its protection, so thick it was. And the drifts of fallen leaves had piled up in their abundance round it. Now the boar heard the sound of footfalls from men and dogs pressing on in the hunt, and out from his lair he came to face them, back all a-bristle, fire glinting from his eyes, and stood close at bay. Then first of them all, Odysseus sprang forward, long spear raised high in his stout hand, ready to strike, but the boar beat him to it, gored him above the knee, tore with his tusk a long gash in the flesh, attacking him slantwise, but failed to reach his leg bone, and Odysseus struck him squarely in the right shoulder, so that the bright spear's point now drove clean through. The boar gasped and fell in the dust, and the life fled from him. Autolycus' sons then busied themselves with the carcass, and the wound that blameless, godlike Odysseus had suffered they skillfully bandaged, and stanched the flow of dark blood with a charm, then went straight back to their father's house. So Autolycus and the sons of Autolycus healed him fully and well, handed over his splendid gifts, and then soon sent him back rejoicing to his native country, to Ithaca. And there his father and lady mother welcomed him home with pleasure, asked detailed questions about how he came to be wounded. He told them the way the boar's white tusk had gored him when he was out hunting up on Parnassus, together with the sons of Autolycus. This scar the old woman recognized when she felt it in the palms of her hands, and she dropped his leg. It fell shin first into the basin with a clatter of bronze. The basin tipped over. The water spilled out on the floor as joy and grief together invaded her heart. Her eyes filled with tears, and her voice stuck in her throat. Her hand reached out to touch Odysseus' chin. She gasped, "It's you, Odysseus, dear child, and I didn't know you until I'd handled the rest of my master's person." With that, she turned her glance in Penelope's direction, wanting to show her that her dear husband was there. But Athene distracted Penelope's mind, so she could neither meet her eye nor guess at her meaning. As for Odysseus, he felt for Eurycleia's throat with his right hand, seized it, with the other drew her close to him, and whispered, saying, "Old nurse, are you trying to kill me? You yourself suckled me at your own breast, and now, after suffering much, I've come, in the 20th year, back to my own country. But since you've hit on the truth, and a god's alerted you, hush now, don't let anyone else in the house find out. For if you do, this I tell you, and it shall come to pass. Should some god let me put down these lordly suitors, I shall not spare you, my nurse though you were, when I slay those other serving women here in my halls." Then prudent Euryclea responded to him, saying, "My child, what's this word that's escaped the barrier of your teeth? You know how firm my strength is, how unyielding. I shall keep your secret as close as hard stone or iron. And another thing I will tell you, and you take it to heart. If some god lets you put down these lordly suitors, then I'll report to you on the women in your halls, which ones dishonor you, and which remain innocent." To her resourceful Odysseus then responded, saying, "Old mother, why tell me of them? There's no need. I myself shall take good note and discover the truth about each one. No, just keep my secret and leave the rest to the gods." So he spoke. The old woman went off through the hall to fetch fresh foot-washing water, for the first lot was all spilt. And when she'd washed him and rubbed him well with oil, Odysseus once more drew his chair back nearer the fire to warm himself, and concealed the scar beneath his rags. Then prudent Penelope started their conversation, saying, "Stranger, there's one small thing I still must ask you, since soon it will be the time for pleasant repose, at least for him whom sweet sleep possesses, despite his cares. But to me some deity's brought a sorrow that's measureless. By day I find my pleasure in mourning and lamentation, while I look to my household tasks and those of my women. But when night comes and sleep catches everybody else, I lie on my bed, and around my throbbing heart sharp cares come crowding to disquiet me as I lament. Just as Pandareus' daughter, the greenwood nightingale, at the fresh onset of spring sings sweetly, sitting perched amid the thick foliage of the trees, and with close variant trills pours forth her rippling song, a dirge lamenting her dear son Itylos, the son of King Zethos, whom once with the bronze she slew unwittingly. Even so, my heart's torn in two directions, this way and that. Should I stay here with my son, keep everything unchanged, property, serving women, this large and high-roofed house, respecting the bed of my husband and public opinion? Or should I now wed whoever's the best of the Achaeans courting me here in my halls, bringing me countless gifts? So long as my son was thinking and behaving as a child, he wouldn't let me abandon my husband's house to remarry. But now he's full grown and has come to manhood stature. He even begs me to go back home, so concerned he's become for his patrimony, which these Achaeans are eating up. But come, hear this dream of mine, and interpret it for me. I had 20 geese round the house. They came up from the water, and I fed them on wheat. The sight of them warmed my heart. But down from the mountain swooped a great eagle with curved beak, broke all their necks, and killed them. They lay scattered all over the hall, while the eagle soared up in the bright sky. I wept and wailed, although it was only a dream, and the fine-dressed Achaean women gathered around me as I grieved sadly because the eagle had killed my geese. But then back it came, perched on a jutting rafter, and with the voice of a human caught me short, declaring, "Take heart, you daughter of far-famed Icarios. This is no dream, but a true vision that will surely be fulfilled. These geese are the suitors, and I, who before was a bird, the eagle, have now at last come back as your husband, who will unleash a grim fate on all the suitors." So he spoke. Then honey-sweet sleep released its hold upon me, and glancing around, I saw the geese in my domain pecking up grain by the trough, as they'd done previously. Then resourceful Odysseus responded to her, saying, "Madam, no way is it possible, by twisting its clear meaning, to interpret this dream any other way, since Odysseus himself has shown you how he'll fulfill it. The doom of all the suitors is clear. Not one of them will escape death and the fates." Then prudent Penelope responded to him, saying, "Stranger, dreams are hard to make sense of or interpret, and not all of them reach fulfillment for us mortals. For there are two gateways set up for fleeting dreams, of which one is constructed from horn, the other from ivory. Those dreams that come through the gate of sawn ivory are deceptive, bringing words that remain unfulfilled. But those that emerge from the gate of polished horn presage the truth for anyone who beholds them. But for me, it was not, I think, from there that my own strange dream came, welcome though that would have been to me and my son. And another thing I will tell you, and you take it to heart. The ill-starred day is approaching. That's to remove me from the house of Odysseus. For now I shall order a contest. Those axes that he used to set up here in his halls in a straight line like ship's props, 12 of them all told, he'd stand at a distance and shoot an arrow through them. So now I shall order this contest for the suitors. Whoever, handling his bow, shall string it most easily, and then shoot an arrow clear through all 12 axes, with him I'd depart, leaving this house to which I came as a wedded wife, a fine home and full of rich possessions. I think I shall always remember it, even in my dreams. To her resourceful Odysseus then responded, saying, Respected wife of Odysseus, son of Laertes, do not any longer delay this contest in your house, for resourceful Odysseus will arrive here before these fellows can get to handle the polished bow, or string it, or shoot an arrow clean through the iron. Then to him prudent Penelope responded, saying, If you were only willing, stranger, to sit on here in my halls and amuse me, sleep would never be shed upon my eyelids. But no way can people possibly go without sleep forever, and so to each one of us mortals on this grain-giving earth, the immortals have allotted a proper time for repose. So I shall go on back to my upper chamber and lie on my bed, although it's become a place of mourning for me, always made damp by my tears, since the day when Odysseus left to set eyes on Ilion, that unspeakable name. That's where I shall lie. But you sleep here in the hall, spread your own bedding, or have them make you up a bed. So saying, she went off back to her bright upper chamber, not alone, for her handmaids accompanied her. And after she'd retired to her upper chamber with her handmaids, then she wept for Odysseus, her dear husband, until gray-eyed Athene cast sweet sleep upon her eyelids.